when a global pandemic brought the world to a standstill, this master of disguise saw his biggest opportunity yet, hitting the jackpot with a £158,000 family spending spree, all thanks to me and you, the great British taxpayers. Imagine a man so committed to this con-man lifestyle that he legally changed his name 9 times in just a decade. Now, he wasn't just hiding from a bad credit score or a failed relationship. He was desperately trying to scrub away a criminal past that stretched from the United States all the way to Romania and spanned right back to the 1990s. On today's episode, we will explore how a hire car, a set of fingerprints, and a few recorded voice notes brought down an international fraud syndicate hiding in plain sight. We study these stories because understanding the behaviour behind the financial crime is your best defence to stop it from happening to you. And to bring you the full picture today, I have scoured the National Crime Agency's files, the court transcripts and the legal records across the world to piece together this story of greed that exploited a national crisis. Now, just next week marks the 6-year anniversary of the first UK COVID lockdown in March 2020. Of course, this was a hugely disturbing and shocking time for the whole country. You know, the streets were silent, the businesses were shuttered up, and the emotional state of the country was one of collective fear and exhaustion, as we would sit down at 5 p.m. to watch the day's events and the death toll numbers unfold. Now, people were losing their livelihoods. We had the government scrambling to prevent a total economic collapse. And one of the primary tools to support the nation was this bounce back loan scheme, a lifeline designed to get up to £50,000 into the hands of struggling small business owners within a few days, often with minimal checks, because speed was an absolute priority in these desperate times. And while business owners that were genuine were just using the money to keep the lights on, Rashid, a 53-year-old from East London, saw a very different path. Now, Rashid wasn't a struggling entrepreneur. He was a seasoned fraudster with previous convictions in America and a 4-year prison sentence hanging over his head in Romania should he dare to return. Now, along with his wife Noreen, his brother Rizwan and his nephew Rahim, Rashid began treating these emergency loans like his own personal cash machine. And, the family business was quite straightforward, really, to use a network of these bogus or dormant companies to apply for the maximum loan for each one. They used them to exploit the situation, falsely claiming these massive annual turnovers that just didn't exist. And in total, they got their hands on 150 grand. But it didn't stop there. Rashid even tried to buy another business for $15,000 on the condition that the current owner was to apply for one of these loans first. Now, thankfully, that owner was smart enough to smell a rat and decided against it. What's awful here is the money wasn't often used for survival. It was funding this lifestyle of luxury that most people were sacrificing during lockdown, of private schools, expensive house renovations and new cars. And all the while, Rashid was also fraudulently claiming universal credit payments to further supplement this deceitful income. Their downfall came when a mix of high-tech surveillance and some good old-fashioned police work. The NCA recovered these voice notes detailing how they were going to send invoices to support the claims and the loans. And shockingly, a search of this hire car of his uncovered documents that related to a totally separate fraud to the universal credit scam. It was a fake claim for someone who was supposedly named Robert Wright. Forensic analysis on these documents found the fingerprints of someone else altogether, and that linked the whole group to this wider web of benefit fraud, which did doors off the whole thing. Now, on the 27th of February 26, Judge Hills described their actions as a systemic and repeated assault on the banks and the bounce back scheme. Rashid was sentenced to 6.5 years in prison. His nephew got 3 years and his wife and brother both received suspended sentences. But for Rashid, of course, the story doesn't stop in the end of a UK prison sentence, because the moment he's released, he faces immediate extradition to Romania to serve another 4 years, where he's wanted after being convicted of a large-scale financial fraud involving the manipulation of business accounts in Romania before coming to the UK. And even years before then, over in the States, under the alias of Lawrence D. Wilson, he was convicted in Philadelphia of mail fraud and aggravated identity theft. Now, this was in relation to forging power of attorney documents, which he used to steal more than $650,000 from property owners. Now, all of this history was hiding behind this facade of false identities, taking advantage of these different situations, but all with the same style and motive. Now, when we look at people like Rashid, we're not looking at just a greedy man. We're looking at a particular psychological phenomenon known as the empathy gap. Now, most of us will have a pro-social bias. So particularly during the pandemic, the average person on the street felt a sense of collective responsibility. You know, we were clapping for our amazing frontline NHS workers. We were trying to pull through together through tough times as a nation. And when the government announced these loans, most of us understood that this money was a resource meant for survival to protect those in the most need. But for a personality like Rashid's, a national crisis didn't trigger empathy, it triggered this opportunistic predatory feeling. Now, in the animal kingdom, there is a hunting strategy, where predators consume any prey they can based on availability, ease of capture, circumstance, as opposed to searching for a specific target. These predators capitalise on random opportunities, just as we see here, preying on a system that was rushed. It was designed to quickly react to a difficult situation. It could also be a classic example of moral disengagement. It didn't see the money as something stolen from a neighbour or a friend or a school. It was from the government. And people are very capable of separating the act from the victim in these cases. In his mind, he might have just been winning at a game where the rules had temporarily been relaxed. This allows criminals to sleep at night because their internal narrative says they're not bad, they're just smarter than the system. And when we think about the business owner early in the story, the one he tried to buy that firm from, now, he wasn't interested in the firm's legacy or running the business in good faith. He did just want to exploit his good name and credit rating to get away with more. And it would have been really easy for that business owner to just think, well, it's not my problem. He's going to take over the risk, or it's just the government's money. But that rejection demonstrated a very high level of moral agency. And they realised that by signing that application, their name would be forever linked to this fraud. It's a stark reminder to us all to resist that bystander effect. If you're finding out how intelligent, experienced people make these catastrophic decisions that lead to crime and how to protect yourself from the same traps, please subscribe now. Next week, we're going to be looking at how swiping right on a dating app could lead to identity harvesting. See you next time.